Hi, everyone tuning in now or later. Welcome to the new webinar, IT Consulting Lifecycle from Assessment to Implementation. My name is Chuck Minguez. I'm the SDR here at One to One and joined today by a very special guest, Nick Paulukow, who is the CEO and visionary of One to One. Today, we are going to be talking about that IT consulting lifecycle, what it looks like through assessment to implementation, with the goal of hopefully providing some education so you don't feel so nervous or afraid in engaging in conversations with MSPs. And we're also going to touch on what we call the core process or one-to-one client journey, and how that plays into this whole theme. So Nick, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you taking some time. For those folks tuning in now or later who are not familiar with one-to-one and your background, would you mind just jumping in a little bit and explaining, how you got started, your role here, and your expertise on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it today. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Nick Paulukow. I founded this organization back in 2001. The organization was established really to empower people through education. So really today, what we're doing is really the mission of the organization as part of that, just an empowerment. So hopefully you get that empowerment today as we go through our presentation. Really what we want you to do is what we found many years ago is that empowerment. It was key to a lot of business leaders making great decisions to move forward. Many times they were not informed, they were not effectively educated, so they didn't move forward on initiatives, not because they didn't want to, not because they didn't want to grow their business, but because they weren't educated enough to feel comfortable to move forward. So my background comes from being, I have a degree in business, a degree in engineering from the IT side of things. So really what my passion is to empower everyone with this education, but bring kind of both things, right? This IT is about talking at an executive level, bringing education on how technology can be utilized to improve your business, to strengthen it, to grow it. It's not just something that's a tool. It isn't. It is something more than that to help your business move forward, systematize, and things like that. So really, our goal here today and always is just to empower through that education, and hopefully, you receive some of that information as we go through it today.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. And you touched on a systematic approach. One-to-one, I think, is very unique in that we offer what's called the core journey or the client journey from
Mhm.
that initial assessment all the way to the completion of implementation and then even beyond that.
Right.
So that's really what I wanted to talk about today and dive into that.
Hmm.
So people, again, like you mentioned, they have the education, they feel comfortable about
Right.
making some really important decisions about their business and their tech. So that process that we go through, the core process, we start with um, every client that we talk to or work with goes through a needs assessment, and
Right.
that's kind of how it kicks off. Can you explain to the people listening in what that needs assessment looks like? What does it consist of, and how that process works, and why it's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you see on your screen right now is really kind of what we call that client journey. And the client journey is to simplify. It's to make this easy and concise, and for everybody to be able to understand what the deliverables are, the next steps through each of the process, so they can be empowered through that education. What's really key about the first one is we really need to know or get on the same page of where you're at now. Right. So, the beginning stage or number one is to, we call it a risk or self-assessment to get you to understand where are you currently at, or how mature are you in your processes, in your technology, how are you utilizing it today. One way that we do that is we follow an industry standard called NIST, the National Standard Institute of Standards and Technology. And what's really key for that is many people get afraid and say, well, that's like a compliance or requirement, I don't need to follow that, it's just too expensive. And why we really like it is it's an excellent base framework to categorize and prioritize where are we at as a business, right? As a business owner all the time, we're trying to determine how mature are we, where are we at, what people do we have? Do we have the right seats filled? Are we utilizing the right vendors and partners? Are we delivering on a great service? So this is doing exactly that, just more in an operational role of identifying where are there risk and issues, where are there concerns, and how do we prioritize it? But using a common language gets us all on the same page. So I'm sure others have used MSPs or other service providers that come in and say, yes, we need to provide all these wonderful, cool tools. And you're like, well, how does that really help my business? We're kind of taking a business first approach and saying, where are you at now? Where do you need to be to improve and to get to where you need to be? So that's really key to number one. We first need to get on the same page and understand your maturity, understand where you want to go, where you're at now. And by using kind of that systematic approach, it's consistent and we're able to measure that and really understand quickly how to get you to the next steps.
That's great. So when someone completes that assessment, then we're seeing the column here, the consultation column, the risk assessment number one. When they complete that assessment, then do they go right into number two and right into number three in that yellow column? Can you explain a little bit more about that and how that's laid out?
Yeah, great question. So number one, the risk assessment too, want to be really clear. We understand that everybody's time is valuable and you may not know who we are, but you want to engage and understand who we are. So we realize that it takes about 15 minutes for the individual or company to assess where they're at. So time is money. So that is really quick. The process is meant to gather data quickly. It is online. And does not require any abrasive digging. It's more of operational questions. These are not IT driven questions. And then what happens is one-to-one takes on ourselves that data and we apply it to the framework and generate an action plan. That action plan is number two. So what is it? That's really gathering your data and coming up with a comprehensive plan to tell you where are you at now? Where is your journey start, and open a discussion. It's really still more and more empowerment of that education in round two. So what that really does is it kind of works through your custom information and helps you understand where you're at, not just where everyone's at, right? So this is
Right.
very customized to the individual organization.
I love that. So yeah, this is great. So this is even before any implementation happens. The potential client we're working with is going to get that snapshot of their IT environment and be able to see, well, these are some of the critical areas that are coming up. These are some of the high areas in my assessment of my security. And then they have a game plan.
That's right. And just to be clear, there is different levels of maturity of where people are at in their business, right? You might be in the startup mode, you might be in kind of building or growth mode, and you might be in like a systematizing mode, meaning that you've hit growth, now you're trying to improve and systematize. So I want to be very clear. Our process is built for those that are in growth mode that aren't afraid to change. They value us at an executive level. So I don't want to remove anyone from this education, but want to be very clear. Sometimes people are like, well, all I need is X, Y, and Z. And that's absolutely great. It just might mean that where we're at and where you're at in your organization as far as maturity is not in the same as where we provide services at the current moment. So I want to be very clear with that. But anybody to go through it provides a wealth of knowledge and education. It helps in any areas from operationally running your business to insurances and coverages and delivery and that type of thing. So this isn't a how can I get help with my IT and fix my computer. That is a component of the delivery, but not the real action of what we're trying to achieve here. So
Right.
just want to be clear that there is an operational maturity level of a business that would find this valuable as they go through it.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, thank you, Nick, for sharing that. So as we kind of wrap up this first column of the consultation phase in the yellow here, the client is going through the assessment. They're getting that snapshot of their environment. What comes after that step then? How do we begin to move from consultation slowly into implementation into this red column here?
Yeah, great question. And so too, I'll reiterate, this assessment is done virtually. The action plan and recommendation is about 45 minutes and is done virtually. So the key is to not put on pressure of an organization that's trying to get empowered with some education. Then number three is a strategy. So we are spending time, money, and energy. We're not currently charging anyone for this. And what we're doing is we're showing you how to reduce your risk, how to manage your IT, and then cost. So we're not going to let you go through all this, empower you, and then say, okay, go find it. We're going to then give you
Yep.
like an example of what the cost is and how to get started. So that's really key. So then that's the more three is more of the tactical. This is how we get started. I now understand it. We're now on the same page. So
Right.
after we get to that point, then that moves into more of a formal engagement, right? The yellow is really just empowerment. We're just trying to empower you. If at step three you're no longer interested and you want to try to do it on your own and self-implement, that's absolutely fine. We just hope that you find the information valuable and that you'll refer us and say that the information that we helped you with was valuable. That's all that we really ask, right?
Right.
To answer your question next, when we go into kind of implement is the action now. So whereas yellow is generally our CFOs, our executive teams, we're talking about strategy and how they want to run their business, how they want to solve their problem. Now, red is more of their operational team. This is we want to get started. Now we're going to implement. And so what we do is we do a kickoff call. What that means is that welcoming is we get our team together now that you're interested in deploying or introducing some solutions into your environment, and we all get on the same page. We all meet, we do introductions, and we continue to walk you through a systematic process. And our goal is to not put any workload on you, is to gather that, educate you, and make sure that the experience is the same across that journey.
Nice.
So many times we hear from other people that are engaging in this of like, this is arduous. It takes a ton of time when I did this before. Why are you any more special than anyone else? You know, they generally put a lot of workload on me and I don't have that kind of time.
Sure.
Those things we've heard over the years. So we've removed that to give you a better experience and make it a lot easier to engage.
Yeah, I love that. And Nick, before we continue on into the implement phase, you kind of touched on this a little bit. So anyone can complete that assessment, right?
Anybody
Is
can,
it
yes.
anybody? It's you go in quick 15 minutes. It could be an IT director, it could be the CFO. But then when we move into that next welcome and kickoff call, could you talk a little bit more about who may be on that from a
Mm.
company's perspective, like who their team members may be on that call?
Yeah, generally the team members, a CFO will engage, maybe an operational leader or an operations manager, someone that's familiar with or owns the IT function in the organization. So
Sure.
relative to your size, many certain sizes of our business, a CFO will own IT. And when I say own, they're not the doing factor, they're just the owning factor of that function in the organization.
Right.
There is other organizations that get larger and that ownership of IT is maybe under an operational role or COO role, and they'll be involved in the kickoff, and then they'll delegate what the tasks for their organization as that welcome call. That welcome call is about 15 minutes for the intro, and we start to say what are the next steps, how are we going to engage, and give a little to-dos for each party. Then we leave and then work to move those next steps on. And it also includes people laugh all the time, but when they engage with us, they say, "Well, I have another provider, and they're great, but we've kind of grown out of them. But I'm
Yeah.
afraid to let them know." And
Yeah.
and we've created another process called managing the breakup. Our job is to integrate with those providers and work nicely to gather the information necessary to make an effective transition.
Right. I'm glad that you brought that up because it's something I wanted to touch on too. Is like the there could be maybe a little bit of uncomfortability in between that
Right,
transition between
right, right,
the
right.
the old and the new. So I love that we offer that as a solution. And it just helps with the seamless transition.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Um,
right. One key thing to remember too is that maturity is key. So whereas some vendors have gone from the break and fix and they've gone from like I just really needed a function of something getting delivered or fixed, that was
right.
fine for them. But then most organizations, when we engage in this process, have matured. They understand their business process, they understand how they operate, they understand their expenses. They're mature enough to realize, okay, I need more of a strategy than just a break and fix or a someone telling me how to deploy a workstation or something like that. There is nothing wrong with that. In the journey
Sure.
of your organization as you grow, you need different vendors and different people for that part of the journey. So I just want to be clear that, you want to pick someone or a provider that is close enough to your operational maturity to bring value to. They've been there, they have done that for organizations of your size. Not find where you find this to fail is where organizations that choose a smaller provider because they may be a little lower cost, they don't have the breadth to be able to speak at the strategy level and develop these plans, and then they become frustrated, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
similar to a lot of IT functions, most internal IT functions are firefighters. They're there to put issues out, work on the problems. They aren't ones to create project plans and implement. Many times firms like us are getting hired to do the project planning and let the firefighters do what they do really well. But many people just need some education there.
Yeah, that's a great analogy too. I love the firefighter analogy. And you touched on implementation and strategy. So in this implementation column, so would that be step 5 then? Is that where we would start talking about strategy? Who's involved in those conversations? Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So number 5 is kind of where we do the physical hands-on. So now that we've done the welcome, the stage 5 is us physically coming on site, meeting your teams, completing the transition from your other provider, implementing the solutions. Now, remember too, I talked a lot about this. All of our processes are built to minimize impact to the end users. So the end user impact generally during this implementation is about 2 or 3 minutes. And they're like, really, 2 or 3 minutes? We're
Yeah,
generally just doing a physical look at their equipment and putting an asset tracker on it so we can start to gather information. The rest of it is done via our customized tools and software where we're gathering data and starting loading documentation, everything into our system so we can better understand what that environment looks like. All of that is on our shoulders to handle during that onboarding process. The team that the customer gets to understand that project plan and what's happening, but they're not required to put much work in. We don't want them to worry about, we own the function
sure.
after they hire us, and we want to own it so that we're not consuming time from their day to day.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because again, that transition period can be, a little challenging for folks. So for
That's
us to
right.
be able to just give them again a seamless transition, so it's hands off for them. They're getting a new service provider coming in. We're taking care of everything for them, so they can just get back to their day to day. I think that's really important.
That's right. Yeah, and you mentioned a word there too that's key. We work in 2 ways for our customers. We work in what's called a managed service level, meaning we completely own the strategy, security, support, implementation, maintenance, everything of the IT function for a company. And then there's a function or a word called co-managed. And what that really means is that we're just supplementing services, but the strategy and the delivery of that strategy is provided by the customer because they have their own IT staff and they
Sure.
require our expertise that's expensive to house in-house from a security perspective, compliance, etc. So it's really important then that we delineate who owns what, and that happens during the welcome call and implementation as well.
That's a great point too, Nick. And so when we look at this process so far, we're from, the yellow column of consulting to the middle section of implementation. Is the journey different for somebody who would be managed versus co-managed, or are they getting the same type of service and solutions up to this point? Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the implementation looks fairly similar, and the process is very similar. In the co-managed situation, we don't own everything, so we might be implementing maybe just a piece of some of the services that we provide. So
Sure.
they may just take a component of our NOC services. What that means is we're doing preventative maintenance, we're doing security updates and patching, we're doing alerting, and we're supporting their IT team instead of us providing all the IT functions. So
Great.
most companies that have like 150 people and below might have a software person on site, but generally not an IT team.
Sure.
That's where you generally would be hiring a managed provider. Their expertise is stronger. They're getting trained and they're growing every day. Whereas you want someone in-house to handle the software side of things like CAD or Epicor or like ERP systems, where you want your specialty in-house. But generally at that size, most people are not hiring IT professionals. It's more cost effective to do it externally.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nick. Um, Great. Yeah. So as we're in step 5, we're getting ready to move into step 6. We have this closeout and future proofing step in the pardon me, implementation process. Can
Yeah.
you touch on that and how that looks and how that rolls out?
Yeah, sure. So number 5 is the pure implementation, where we're getting you implemented, migrated off your other provider, and now immediately providing services. Number 6 is when things are settled, things are in action, and we have now assessed your environment. So we've taken the consult data from a high level. We understand what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And now we've gathered all the technical information about the environment, and we are now going to provide you at the closeout of our implementation what a 12-month roadmap looks like. So these are risks, these are issues, these are cost saving measures. These are some other things to consider in your planning. And we'll put that in a 12-month plan and work to future proof kind of what that ownership is. We came in with our expertise. These are things that we see. These are concerns that we may have. These are positives. And then we map that out and all get on the same page. So now we have a predictable next step, not this, oh, wow, we have to spend $10,000 capital expense because something broke. We
All
should
right.
have already assessed that and planned that and then work to get on the same page with the customer. So that's really what 6 is. Now, I want to be very clear. 5 is our technical team, our really smart engineers.
Great point.
Number 6 is our account management team, which is our strategists, our business professionals, and they're infusing that aspect into your delivery. So quite different. It's also different in maturity. So maybe a smaller provider does not have all those functions in the organization. So you're not going to receive such a verbose solution. And if you're looking for that, then you need to be asking those questions when interviewing providers for what you really need.
That's a great point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for touching on that. So, all right, so we're wrapping up the consultation. We have the implementation process kind of wrapped up. I did want to talk about ongoing education and processes since you did talk about account management, but should we
Yeah,
jump into
sure.
the manage column first before we
Yeah,
get
let's
into
do
that?
it. Let's
Yeah,
do it.
okay.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yes.
we finished up implementation. Now we're into everything's in the system. And how does that play out?
Yeah, sure. So now we're already engaged. We're owning and we're handling day-to-day functions of the business for the functions that they've hired us for. The orange section there, manage, just shows you the life cycle of how we've developed our team to be able to respond to you. All right. So what we're very clear about is response is key. So right now, I think we measure anywhere from 5 to 8 minute response time on issues that are delivered to us. And so what's key about that is we have separate divisional teams. So this fancy thing called the NOC, we call it our Network Operations Center. This is where we have a team of people preventatively doing things, such as patching, alerting on any risk or issues or things about to fail. Kind of like the engine light on your car. Hey, the light's there. Somebody is checking it, making sure that there is nothing wrong, or if something needs repaired, they get moving on it. This is also our security team, where they're evaluating any risk or issues that are happening on a daily basis. They're proactive. They're sitting there responding like an alarm company, right?
Right.
Then the service team is really our help desk team. They're constantly responding, working with end users, showing them how to use Word or Excel, fixing a problem, changing their password, helping them with a vendor software or an update or a patch or anything like that. And then our pro service team is all of our our engineers, are really, really intelligent people that are implementing new solutions. And so why would I spend all the time talking about 3 separate delivery units? What's key is you have all 3 of those teams working for you all the time. So we can implement a new project by servicing your end users and still providing that preventative. Many times we find at other levels, some of the smaller organizations, the same guy that services them also tries to do the preventative maintenance, that tries to do the
Right.
implementation. And that's fine for a small organization that can deal with that lag time. The companies that we're dealing with are in growth mode. So they want quick response. They want quick delivery. They want good paid professionals, right?
Sure. Yep.
Kind of example that I give is I might have a controller in my business that knows how to manage the accounting functions. However, we're not big enough, an organization might not be big enough to have a CFO that handles strategy and bigger picture and acquisitions and things like that. So I'm going to hire maybe my accounting firm to do that.
Right.
Or I'm not versed in taxes and the tax laws that change. Think about us in that way. We're kind of like the accounting firm, the experts in ever-changing security and the experts in the bigger picture thinking, whereas maybe your in-house people are kind of the day-to-day controller, if you look at it
Right.
in that way.
Yeah, it's a great analogy too. And when we look at this managed component piece, you mentioned the three different teams. For someone who is fully implemented into our system and they need to get help and support, are they able to talk to anybody on all those teams?
Mm.
Or is
Yeah,
everybody
great question.
available?
Yeah, so the entire team is available to service them at any time. Generally, our primary contact at the organization has access to everyone in the organization. And then what we do is we provide many ways for the end users to contact us. Call us on the phone, email, chat applications, even an online portal for them to do that. We'll also deploy a system tray icon. That's a button that reminds them of where to go and how to go there. Also, a really cool tool that will record the issue. How many times does somebody say, well, today it was doing it, but now that you called, it's not making the noise anymore,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're able to record it and submit the video for us to respond to their issue pretty quickly.
Very nice. Yeah. Thank you for that too. That's great. So, we're kind of wrapping up the managed column here, and at the bottom of the orange, it says recurring business reviews.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about what that is, what that means? Who is the client talking to when they get to step 7?
Sure. Yes, sure. So step 7, it then goes into our account managers, and our account managers are the ones providing that strategy. But we want to do that quarterly. So we're going to meet with you each quarter, and we're going to go over that plan. Now, out of the 3 quarters of the year, we're going to go over plans that we created in the fourth quarter. So we're going to help you budget. We're going to create plans. We're going to agree on where the business is, meaning we're generally working with you and we understand where expansion is going to be. Is there going to be any acquisitions? We're going to be making some changes. Our office is moving. We're really concerned about solving for this solution this year as an executive team. We'll then create a plan, which happens, and then that plan is agreed upon, which when we meet with you quarterly and then say, okay, here's some risk and issues we're seeing from the last quarter. These are items that we had planned. Let's start executing to create predictability. Many
Right.
times we're like, man, I wish my IT department could own the whole function. Right now, I feel like we just delegate things to them. So this is the function where we own it and we're providing it to you and the executive. When I say you, the leadership team is then making decisions based off of the recommendations relevant to how their business is moving that year.
Nice. Very nice. So we're wrapping up, the whole process, the journey from consulting, implementation to manage. Is there anything that continued support that you would want to touch on that happens after someone gets through this process outside of the recurring business reviews? Are there any other solutions or services that might play into that and just keeping people educated, our
Yeah.
clients educated, their teams educated?
Absolutely. Because of kind of that mission to empower and educate, we spend a significant amount of time doing webinars such as this, empowering through seminars and meet and greets. We also do in-person training for clients. Also, when we deploy projects relevant to how large the customer is, we'll do video training for those employees to say, okay, you've now moved to a new solution. This is what it looks like to access your email or get access to files. Gives a lot of comfort to those users and allows them to kind of rinse and repeat that video. But
Nice.
we have a ton of social. We post every day educational information. It's really imperative that we're constantly providing you an avenue of education and giving you kind of those risk and issues. And it's not just us. We bring our partners, we bring other clients. We have a podcast on leadership because it's really key for us to also educate on how to properly lead and bring those leaders so all of you can understand, how to solve for leadership issues as well.
Very nice. This entire process, Nick, from beginning to end, I know it varies by client and customer, but would you be able to give a quick just snapshot of what the average might look like for somebody that's
Sure.
considering working with an MSP and going through this journey?
Yeah, so from the left side on the yellow, the consult side, that's generally, let's just say on average, an hour and 45 minutes or maybe 60 minutes of your time to get through that process. Okay. After you're done that, the implementation is really somewhere about 1 week of time to 2 weeks, relevant to the size of your organization. So we have processes developed to move pretty quickly. Unfortunately, we've heard horror stories that are like, it's taken them 6 months to fully get us integrated over. That breaks our heart because we spend a ton of time to make sure that this is seamless and happens quite quickly.
Sure.
And then that closeout or number 6 gives you that start of that business review. So we're immediately starting those right away. We're starting you on that journey pretty quickly.
Very nice. Is there advice that you would give to somebody who's looking to work with an MSP? What they should look for, maybe different questions maybe they should ask as they're going through this journey of seeking out an MSP?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing that I can do is I can show you kind of what we feel makes us unique, and then I can
Yeah,
kind of work back to some questions, right?
sure.
So from perspective of people that generally engage with us is they want some human interaction, right? They want us to be able to be the strategy component. They're looking for us to do that in the data-driven format. So
Mhm.
instead of just using emotions to say, this is what we need to do, or I'm pushing a new product to you because that's the cool thing on the market, we're using data-driven information to inform you of risk and issues through that data. We're using a full team support model. So every employee in our environment is supporting your business. It's not just one person that's dedicated to solve all your issues.
Right.
And if you're an organization that wants to think bigger, we're here to push and drive through consistent process to get you to a bigger picture. That's generally the people that are engaging with us or want to engage with us. So many times we're the second step in their growth. So they might have more of an entry level provider in the beginning, and then they're now needing to mature. We're generally taking kind of that more mature organization. That's somewhere in organizations that are generally maybe 30 to a few hundred users are generally ones that are in that maturing stages. Now, everybody matures at a different level, so it's not just on quantity per se,
Sure.
but an organization that has developed and has an organizational structure, right? They have a CFO, they have operations. That's generally where we flourish because then we own one of those functions, which would be more of the IT side of things.
Yeah.
Questions that I would ask if I was interviewing an MSP to answer that question, Chuck, would be more based around, what other organizations of my size do you work with? What are the services that you provide? Can you give me some example strategy that you've developed for them? How do you provide services? Like, what's your response time? Those are really key questions to start to develop. I would really encourage you to understand what you're looking to solve for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of business owners are like, well, I'll just hire someone and they'll solve all my problems. Or I'll buy this software and it'll solve all my problems. It
Right.
doesn't. So
Yeah.
if you don't understand what your business strategy is and what you need to solve for, we don't need you to know how to solve for it at a technology level, but we do need to know that you have some sort of plan
Right.
and that you're searching for someone to help solve for that. That's really key. So take the time to really think about that. Many people look to switch a provider over price, or they're frustrated. We're not the price game. We're in the game of providing you high professionals to solve your problems and help you meet your initiatives. So that
Right.
does cost money. There really is no apples to apple comparison, unfortunately. It's kind of looking at an accountant, right? There might
Yep.
be a single CPA. That's great for where I'm at now. But now when I need a specialist in tax, in tax, or I need a specialty in another area, they might be too generalized for me and not give me the result I want. So when I step up to a larger firm, whereas it may cost more, I'm now getting specialty in the areas that I need. I would just, warrant that everybody that's on the call and or is going to listen to this is that they're aware of that, right?
Right.
Many times
Yep.
people are like, well, let's compare apples to apples. Well, what are you trying to compare,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And just to be aware of that. And Chuck, you get into that many times too, so you may have some opinion on that.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that actually ties in nicely with the number 4 here for our core uniques, is that we want to be a partner with you, and we want to help you grow. We want to sit at the table with you. We don't want to just, you mentioned earlier, the break and fix model. Like, we don't want to
Right,
just sell stuff to you to sell stuff. We want to actually see your company succeed.
right.
I think that's really
Absolutely.
important. Um, on these 4 uniques too, number 1 jumps right off the page to me about putting the human back in technology services. Can you
Yeah.
talk about why that is so important?
Yeah, it is important because many times people were used to being bullied over by technical terms, right? Their IT people made them feel inadequate because they're talking all these acronyms and different things. We want to talk about when we say the human back in the technology, we want to talk to you about that from a business standpoint, not just from geek speak, right? It's kind of
Right,
like, we're here to be a professional to get it done. I don't know all of the specifics about what my accountant does when he does my taxes. I just have built a relationship and they have a reputation that they can perform that service.
right,
But I want them to be responsive. I want them to communicate to me. I want them to be proactive. I want them to look out for me. That's really that human interaction, right?
yep,
Anybody can do the services. We just want to be able to make sure that you're receiving the level of customer service. We are
yep.
not perfect. We have human beings, things happen, but we're here to own it and here to, move forward and learn from it as well.
That's nice. Yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap things up. So, and a quick recap is we, at 1-to-1, we have a core process that anyone can go through, and we feel like it's effective to get people into our system and to help them with their day-to-day IT solutions. It's not a very long process. It's meant to be easy and get
Right.
people feeling comfortable about how they align their tech goals and their business goals. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely fair to say. Absolutely.
Nice. Any parting thoughts or things that you would want to let people know about what this core process is and how it looks and or how they can get involved?
Yeah, I think the best way to get involved is one, do your research. Find an organization that is empowering through education because it's really key for you to be educated to make an informed decision. Don't always look on price. Compare based around what you're trying to solve. Be
Right,
open and honest, and build a relationship during that initial conversation. I will tell you, our process is that our executive team gets involved in this process. So it is not just infusing a salesperson or something like that. Our leaders are getting involved with talking to you as a prospective client during that first consultation phase. And that takes time, money, and energy, but we're committed to kind of that education and
right.
empowerment.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you, Nick, so much for your time. I will
Absolutely.
make sure we get these slides out. They'll be posted on the webinar landing page, and we'll email them out to everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Nick and I are both available on LinkedIn. You can find us over there if you have any questions. I don't want to speak for Nick, but you can reach out to me. I'm sure Nick would be open to it too if you have
Absolutely.
any questions.
Connect away.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you, Nick.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate your
Yep.
time today.